Hey, Dr. Karp here. Welcome to San Francisco and episode number 1 of Weight Loss Awakening. Super excited, and there's a lot to go over, but first I wanted to give you a little bit of an introduction. I apologize for the audio here. We're on top of the roof. As you know, most of you are coming to this site because you probably read my newsletter on miraclenoodle.com, which is my company. And now I'm sort of taking the ideas of those newsletters and focusing in on something that I've been teaching my patients in my medical practice, and that is how to become your own healer, how to become your own authority. And what I found is that, especially with my patients with autoimmune disease like psoriasis and lupus, I've been able to teach people how to take control of their own situations and go through a healing. And as a pleasant side effect of those particular patients, what we discovered is that people achieve their ideal weight. And what I consider to be someone's ideal weight is basically the weight where they are genetically supposed to be at this particular point in their lives. Now, there are a lot of environmental factors involved, and before we go into those, I wanted to introduce to you some concepts that are related to the course that we are going to be embarking on together. Now, first of all, if you're seeing this on the Facebook group, that is the only place where we're going to have confidential. It's a closed group, and people can, well, my hope actually is that we create a community of support for people to feel like there's a social support system for people. If you're seeing it somewhere else, maybe YouTube or somewhere else, then I recommend that you go to Facebook and you find the group if you want to be part of a supportive group. That's what we're focused on. I want this to become a group of self-discovery where I'll be sharing insights and things that I've learned over the years. It's up to you to determine how valuable they are or not for you. Now, we're working on what we call the 4 pillars of health. And I'm going to go over the 4 pillars of health in this video, as well as go into the 9 features of radical remission. And that is based on a book called Radical Remission by an author by the name of Kelly Turner, which is a fascinating book on people who have healed cancer. Now, what is the association between cancer and weight loss? Well, there's lots of associations, but the main one that I'm going to discuss over and over again is that in order to make a substantial change in our bodies, we need to go through a healing. We need to embark on a healing journey. And there are certain principles that she's discovered that are common in people as they're embarking on a healing journey. But before we get into that, I want to talk about the overall plan of attack here, which is to go through systematically the 4 pillars of health. And the 4 pillars of health are nutrition, mental state or psychological well-being, or distracting thoughts, or anything related to sort of your mental state. The next is activity. That's sleep cycles, sexual activity, exercise, anything involved with the movement of your body. And then the 4th pillar is environmental influences. And environmental influences are things like toxins in your environment. They can be toxic people in your environment. There's lots of things in your environment that impact your genetics, and they impact the ability of your body to heal, to detoxify, to lose weight, whatever the goal of the healing is. In this case, we're going to be talking about weight loss, but it involves a whole host of other things. Now, these 4 pillars, what makes them so very interesting is that they all interact. The environmental pillar, as I mentioned, can impact your thoughts. If there's something in your environment that, I'll give you an example, something in your environment, noise as an example, that can interfere with your sleep, and your sleep is part of that activity cycle. It can also impact your ability to focus. It can environmental toxins in the food can affect the absorption of nutrients in the food that you eat. So there's all of these things impact all of the other factors, all of the other pillars that we're dealing with. So those 4 pillars, and we're going to go systematically through nutrition, systematically through environmental influences. I'm going to be teaching you a principle or an exercise called mental imagery in the mental state portion of this course, which will allow you to get control over your thoughts and will allow you to get rid of thoughts that are not serving the goal of increased health, because we're not focusing here necessarily on weight loss. I know it's called Weight Loss Awakening, but the reason I called it Weight Loss Awakening is because I believe very, very strongly that the path of weight loss represents a unique opportunity for everyone to achieve a higher level of awareness, a higher level of awakening. And when you get one part of your life fixed, when you get this part of your life fixed, other things happen and it feels like an awakening. And that's why I call it Weight Loss Awakening. So getting back to this issue of the interaction between these 4 pillars, what's important is that we're going to go through them systematically. So I'll be teaching you an entire course in nutrition that's relevant to the goals at hand. I'm going to be going through, as I mentioned, mental state and teaching you mental imagery. We'll be going through the environmental influences in your environment, making sure your environment is conducive to healing. And then we'll go into the basics of exercise, understanding how to improve your sleep, a whole host of things when it comes to the activity cycle. Okay, so now you always are going to see me with my red notebook, and so get used to seeing it. This is where I jot down all of my ideas about what the episodes are going to be about and what I look forward to sharing with you and going through my notes with you so that we have a clear and concise path on these courses, sort of that it's systematic. The next thing I wanted to go into is the 9 features of healing. And we're going to go through them, and you'll find links to everything that I mention, any books that I mention, in the links below. And I look forward to your comments about anything here. You can leave them and we'll carry on a discussion. And sometimes I'll make videos specifically about the comments in the that are mentioned. Okay, so the first thing, so let's go into Radical Remission. So the first thing about Radical Remission, these are people who have healed their cancer. Their doctors told them that they had no other way of healing, and they've been able to heal their cancer. So the first one, radical change in diet. Now obviously we know that that's going to be involved in weight loss. There's no tricks here. Everyone watching is going to have to make a radical change in their diet. Of course, I'll be teaching you how to do that in the simplest fashion. And this might be the place to introduce another cardinal idea of my teaching, which is the 80-20 rule. Now, the 80-20 rule is actually an economic idea by a man, an economist in Italy, probably, I think, a couple hundred years ago, named the Pareto principle, and it showed that 20% of people owned 80% of the land. And what they found is that this can be transposed into all sorts of parts of your life. For example, 20% of your clothes you wear 80% of the time. 20% of customers usually make up 80% of the business. It goes on the other side. 80% of the customers make up 20%. 20% of the foods you make up 80% of the calories that you eat. So all this gets transferred through everything in life, and sometimes the ratio is not exactly 80 to 20, but nonetheless, I think you can get the idea here. And what makes this so valuable for us is that, first of all, for all of us, the health impacts of the food that we eat are impacted by 20% of the foods we eat. 20% of the foods are impacting 80% of the metabolic changes that are going on in our body when it comes to nutrition. So what that means is we only need to find a 20% part of our diets to make radical changes in. We only need to understand 20% of the most high impact things that I'm going to be teaching you. So we'll be going through that idea much, much more in detail as things go on. The next one is taking control of your health. Taking control. So my mission in life, almost, I could say, is to teach people how to become their own authorities in health. And what that means is not that we ignore experts. It's not that we are not listening to experts. It's that we take the information from experts and we learn how to make decisions based on those for ourselves. That's very, very important. And this is not only a mission of mine in my life, but is step number 2 in this Radical Remission book. The next is learning to understand intuition. So I won't be necessarily teaching you this, but I think we should always exercise our intuitive faculties and learn about that. In other words, get what's your gut feeling right now about the things that I'm saying? Does it resonate with you? When I talk about the nutritional ideas, will these resonate with you or not? You need to grow this faculty. Next is use of herbs and supplements. In the nutrition part of these episodes, we're basically going to be going through herbs and supplements that can help with achieving optimal health, which will then cause you to lose weight. Our focus here is not losing weight, but improving health, which will cause you to reach your genetic potential of weight loss. Now, at this point, a lot of people ask me in my clinic, what do you mean by these 4 pillars, and why haven't you included genetics? The reason I haven't included genetics is because our nutrition, our mental state, our environmental influences, and our thoughts affect the way our genes express themselves. So when we control the 4 pillars, very windy, sorry about that. When we control the 4 pillars, we control the genetic expression of our bodies, and we can reach sort of that genetic potential, that genetic ideal weight that we're all looking for. If you're focused on looking like the latest Hollywood celebrity, this is not the course for you. This is a course to improve your health and get rid of some of the chronic health conditions that you have and move to a weight that is consistent with the proper genetic expression of your body and your optimal health. The next is releasing suppressed emotions. So when you're releasing suppressed emotions, or at least when you're getting to the core of them, you start to understand yourself better, and it's also like sort of taking a weight off of your back. We'll be doing that through a technique called mental imagery, and if you're interested in getting a quick start on what mental imagery is, I'll leave you a link below to one of my teacher's books. His name's Dr. Gerald Epstein. He's in New York City, and the book is called Healing Visualization. It's an introductory primer on mental imagery that will be going through some of these teachings much later on. Okay, the next is increasing positive emotions. We'll be speaking about that also in the mental state portion. Embracing social support. Now, that's the next one. So the issue of embracing social support is a tricky one. And the reason it's tricky is because when you're embarking on this, I don't actually want you to tell anybody that you're embarking on it. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, and it may sound uncomfortable for you, especially if there are people in your lives that you want to share this with. But the truth of the matter is, I can't tell you how many times people have been pushed off the path because of unsupportive social contacts. And a lot of times it's the social contacts that they thought would be supportive that aren't. And let's be frank about this. When you start taking control of your health, there are going to be a lot of people who resent you because they haven't been able to do it themselves, along with a whole host of other negative things that are going on in the people around us. So why this group is important, why this closed group is important, is twofold. One is, when you post here, no one outside of this group can see your posts. Number 2, I'm hoping to create a social support here in the group so that you don't have to go and risk someone pushing you off the path that you're on. Now, at some point, as you start losing the weight, people might come to you and you're looking better, and they might say something like, "Wow, you look great. What have you been doing?" Well, in that case, okay, it's fine to share. But in the beginning, when we are sort of, I would say, little kids in this new world of growth, of weight loss, of this course, which is more about, as I mentioned, awareness, awakening, that when we are sort of new in this world and we're sort of like babies and we're not strong, but as we progress, it may seem rocky at first, but later on it will be really cool, and you'll be having a good time, you'll be feeling better, and at that point we'll be stronger and we'll be able to handle people, and we may be able to express what we're doing a little bit more. Next is deepening spiritual connections. We'll also be discussing this, and I'll be making references to God throughout. And I think here's one thing that I'll say, that if the issue of talking about God makes you uncomfortable, then this is probably not the group. Now, I'm Jewish, and we don't proselytize our religion, so I'm not going to be trying to convert you to my religion. But all of us need a connection with the divine source. We need a connection with God, and we'll be discussing that throughout the entire course, because it pertains to every single one of the pillars. And again, if that is uncomfortable for you, then this is not the course for you. There's lots of options out there, and so this is just one of them. And then the next is strong reasons to live. Now, we're not necessarily dealing with a life-threatening thing like what's being discussed in Radical Remission's book, but I will say that, and it's sort of aligned with what we just discussed about connecting with God, we need to have an ever-present awareness of why we're doing what we're doing. And as I mentioned before, the focus of Weight Loss Awakening is not losing weight. It's achieving optimal health, and then as a side effect of that, losing weight, achieving our genetic weight that we're supposed to be at, achieving optimal health, and that's what the focus is. And I think if we have an ever-present awareness of why we're doing this, I don't want to put words in your mouth, because everyone's doing this for a different reason, but I think we need to state that one of the reasons all of us are doing this is because we want to have better lives. We want to be healthier. We want to have more energy. And why are we doing that? So that we have a better reason we're living better. And when we think about what are the reasons that we're doing this, we all should sort of think, why are we doing this? And I would love to hear your comments below in the Facebook group. One person's reasons we can often recognize our own reasons in other people's reasons. It's sort of like we're all connected in a way. So those are the 9 things about that are discussed in Radical Remission. I'm going to try to keep these episodes super short. That's very difficult for me, because as you can see, I like to talk. But here's the thing. Before I go, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about myself and how I came up with this Weight Loss Awakening. I'm a dermatologist. I also own Miracle Noodle. That's why most of you know me. And I found out that I had a patient that came in probably 10 years ago now. I'm not around that. Her name was Karen, and I had her on all kinds of medications for lupus, and I wasn't controlling her. She disappeared for a while, and she came back completely clear, like remarkable. It was one of the most amazing things I've seen in my life. And this embarked me on a journey of learning about natural healing and nutritional interventions, which led me to a whole host of other things. A couple years later, I had my own serious health issue, and from that, thank God, I'm all better, and it also triggered even more of a passion for learning about nutrition and all kinds of natural interventions. Now, I brought this back to my practice of dermatology, and I started putting people with autoimmune diseases like lupus and psoriasis and eczema on these weight loss programs. On these nutritional programs. It caused them to lose weight. That wasn't the goal. And so this sort of led from one thing to another, and here we are, me teaching this online. Now, what makes this sort of experimental is that I didn't really have a outline course that I went through. Essentially, people would come in, and we would have a free-form exchange, and I would express the ideas that I'm expressing to you over, a period of months. What I'm doing is taking this and putting it onto film.